I think.
Yes, it's now official. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another IDS member seminar. This time we're lucky to have Dr. Samuel Jibao with us. Samuel has interacted with IDS for more than a decade now, in different roles. He's currently the director of the Center for Economic Research and Capacity Building in Freetown in Sierra Leone. He's also assistant lecturer at the African Tax Institute in Pretoria University. He has quite a lot of experience at different levels within the policy spaces, and that was precisely what we were discussing. Was try to use three hats today in this presentation, in this talk. One as a researcher, another one as a key policy actor, and within that as a civil servant, a senior civil servant. His last stint with the Sierra Leone Revenue Authority was for the past 5 years as Commissioner General of the National Revenue Authority. And today's talk, and we'll then after the talk continue into a discussion, is precisely that linkage between research, evidence, or the use of evidence in policy and administration, and with quite a lot of insights within the case of the National Revenue Authority in Sierra Leone. Samuel, I'll leave it to you. I'm going to hide in the corner since you for the next half hour.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon all. With your permission, please, let me just stand as an old teacher. And thank you for the introduction. The topic, what actually I intend doing is to see how I can share my own experience with you along this journey to see how research can feed into policy making. And also the other component is to see, as a practitioner coming to an academic institution, what are the type of challenges and how can you navigate through? So two issues. One is for the senior researchers. How do you connect to policy makers? How can you make yourself relevant when it comes to policy making? And the second component is either as a student, for example, from the practical field. I'm coming from the public sector, now in the academic. I want to do academic research. What are the issues and how can you get over that? So these are the two issues I want to handle. Now, I intend laying it out. Oh, sorry, the technology. It's not.
The system at the back.
Yes, you can just assist. What's happening? It's frozen. Yeah, just move to the next slide. I wish time is management. Okay, so this will be the outline of my presentation. Of course, the context is going to be laid out, giving you the country information, so you know the kind of economy we're talking about here. And of course, then I will look at the policy formulation, the different stages, and the actors that are actually involved in those, and what each actor is doing at what stage, the type of research which the public sector, or we call them the internal researchers, are doing. And I will make a case study of my research department at the Revenue Institution, and the research areas for external researchers. Of course, what are some of the challenges you're going to encounter, especially looking at the context, like I said, the type of economies, these low-income economies. Then grabbing opportunities, how can you make your work or yourself visible in policy-making process? And the last one will be now the possible challenges practitioners are facing in doing academic research, and I said, my own personal experience, I hope it will be useful to you, and then I will conclude. In terms of the country, putting it into context, of course, Sierra Leone is quite a small country with an estimated population of about 8 million. And when you look at the country, of course, it's import-driven country, meaning that we rely more on imports than exports. And the major imports, of course, are that of foodstuff and petroleum products. They account for about 41% of our imports bill. And the export receipts is a mineral-rich country. And we do a lot of minerals. We do diamond, iron ore, and cocoa. But actually, iron ore is the key export now, which is accounting for like almost export. If you look at the export receipts, we're talking about over 80% of our exports is actually from minerals. The rest comes from the other areas. The growth rate is challenged. And because it's an import-driven country, you can see that any external shock is actually going to hit us very hard. So like the issue about the COVID, the issue dealing with the Ukraine war, which affected the supply chain, actually hits the economy very high on the supply side, and that affected our growth, etc., the growth performance. If you look at the public sector architecture, we have a two-tier system of government. We have the central government and we have the local government. The local government, we have 22 councils, of which 15 are district councils, 6 city councils, and 1 municipality. And of course, below the councils, we have the chiefdom level, and the chiefdom are not actually layers in principle. They are not recognized as a level of government, but they get delegated functions from the local councils. And we have 190 of those chiefdom councils. Yeah, that's one. In terms of the central government, it's a presidential system. We have the executive headed by the president. Of course, we have the vice president and the ministers and the civil servant. The ministers are actually the political heads of the MDAs, and their responsibility is actually that of general policy formulation, guidance, and implementation of those policies. When it comes to the civil service and the commissions, of course, they do impact on policy formulation because they provide the information for policy formulation, but they are actually responsible for implementation of those policies that have been formulated. Of course, we have the DGs and the commissioners. They are the technical guys. Like I was the Commissioner General, for example, for 5 years. Of course, my background is in taxation, so it's expected that at least you are the professional head in that particular area. So you have a responsibility to the executive, but also you have the responsibility to the legislative. Reason being, you are appointed by the president or nominated by the president, but it is the parliament that is going to approve your nomination. So they have right to also see that what we are doing or whatever policy prescriptions that are being done are being, they do oversight role. So the legislative, of course, you have the speaker, MP, members of parliament, and their key responsibilities, 3 responsibilities which they have, that is legislation, they have to pass laws, they have to make sure that they do oversight role, and they have to do representation. That's the role of that group. And of course, the judiciary is responsible for enforcement of law through the medium of the court. Now, policy formulation, of course, in Sierra Leone, we have the agenda is being set. And how is the agenda set? The agenda is set through the manifesto. Mainly is from our manifesto of the ruling government. Because when we are doing elections, for example, in 2023, we are doing our elections, the agenda of the ruling party was, we call it the big 5. The government will say that if you vote me in, I will ensure that I prioritize agriculture, number 1. That is my flagship program. The next program is human capital development. The next one is youth unemployment, etc. The big 5. So that's very clear. It's clearly articulated in the manifesto. Again, the country has what we call the medium-term development plan. So that's the trick now. If the medium-term development plan overlaps into another manifesto year, then we have to make sure it aligns, because at the end of your 5 years of in power, what you are going to be assessed on is what? Your manifesto. You said you are going to ensure that there is, you are able to feed the country. You said you are going to ensure that we have human capital development. By the way, the human capital development was our flagship program in 2018. The government has been re-elected. So the human capital is talking about things dealing with no child left out of education. We should provide free education, school dropout, etc. These are all specific objectives. So once the broad policy is being set, what happens? The ministers now have the responsibility. You as a minister, you have to come out with specific objectives in line with the broad agenda. If, for example, we're talking about human capital development, and that's broad, so definitely you as a minister of education, you need to say, oh, now, if we want to achieve that within 5 years, we have to ensure that we do free education tuition. We have to ensure that we give subsidies to schools, etc. That is the kind of things. Now, once the specific objectives are set by the minister and his team, of course, the minister and his team now will do detailed policy design, well-costed policy design. Now, once they do that one, now they take this document now to the decision makers. Who are the decision makers? The decision makers are the cabinet and that of the parliament. So the decision makers, the parliament, the cabinet receives these documents from the ministers in the form of a cabinet paper, meaning the minister is going to do a cabinet paper. They take all the policy prescriptions that he has actually collated from his team, and he will now present it in cabinet for discussion. The cabinet is headed by the president. So once the discussions have been done, few questions, all the necessary questions have been answered, then the cabinet approves. The minister is given the go-ahead now to go and do a draft legislation. If it is, for example, a tax, they will ask you now go and draft a finance bill. If we're talking about the general budget, go and now draft your budget. And that is the bill that will be taken to parliament for discussions and for approval. Now, once the budget or the parliament approves the bill again is going to be taken back to president for presidential assent. Once the president assents, then it becomes law. Then that law now is taken to the MDAs for implementation and, of course, for evaluation as the last stage of it. So that is how our policy is being done. Now, I will just say that for tax policy formulation, it's a little different in the sense that when we are doing social policies, for example, when we are doing the poverty reduction strategy paper, that policy required a lot of consultation. They had to go to even the children levels, do focus group discussions to know the priorities, all those kind of things we have been done. In the case of tax policy formulation, we do not necessarily have to do that for certain reasons. One, the Minister of Finance knows, according to the Constitution, exactly when to lay the finance bill in parliament, when to lay the budget speech. So it is actually an accelerated timetable given to him that in November, for example, you must come with the budget. And the budget goes with the finance bill in the case of the tax. And the finance bill has to be discussed before you lay the budget. So with that, you see the minister and his team, they are under immense pressure. So there is no time for him to go to communities, start asking questions about how you want to see the tax rate, how you want to see the tax base. So the process itself is a bit closed. It's a bit closed. It's not that open. We do consultation, but not at that extensive rate. Besides that, Not all tax policies actually require consultation. If we want to change tax rates or tax base, if you say you are going to ask people whether to reduce the rate or the base, you are not going to have any consensus. So what happens, you rely on your technical team to do the number crunching, and that now feeds into the policy design, and that is what you will do the formulation. So again, despite no consultation, extensive consultation as required, but I want to say that tax policy formulation requires a lot of quantitative and qualitative work. So, who are the actors normally involved? Now, for Sierra Leone, if it is budget, now you note that the research department of the Ministry of Finance normally leads on that, the chief economist. He normally does most of the write-up. And the staff of the tax policy division of the Ministry of Finance will lead on the budget, the finance bill preparation. And we have the policy legislative committee where we have the Ministry of Finance and the National Revenue Authority. The actors, where are they getting their information from? They do get their information. First, they even get it from the ministers, the politicians. Note that the politicians also have got friends. Taxpayers normally visit them and they discuss certain issues with them. So once they get these issues, now they send the issue now to the technical team to say, what is the effect? If we decide to implement this specific policy, what are the effects, etc.? They will ask the necessary questions. Also, they get from their own internal analysis, which they do. For example, the Revenue Authority, my research department, we do their analysis, they look at the laws, and they can now say, oh, looking at the legal department, we notice there is a lot of transfer pricing going on because of the law, the loopholes in the law. So in the next subsequent finance bill, we need to do this in order to close those loopholes. Tax consultants normally send in information. We have requests for tax consultant. Also, they do written recommendation because we don't want to go into that complicated discussions with tax consultants. They are hired by their taxpayers and they are just like lawyers. They need to please their clients. So obviously, most of them are going to say, we don't want any tax. We don't want any tax to be levied. So we do accept, we do get information from them, but at the end of the day, we do analysis to see how many of those proposals were included in the budget. International partners also do it. IMF, the World Bank, for example, for tax to the Fiscal Affairs Department, and the external researchers do minimum. And one thing that I may not forget to tell you, that the budget or finance bill process itself is a political event. So the reason why we don't want to open it up, it's a political event. The day they say the Minister of Finance is reading the budget, everybody should be eager. So if we go into consultation and we let out everything that is in the budget, the interest will be gone. Because that's the document the government is going to narrate their political goal, what they want to achieve. Move a little past. So what are the type of evidences? We have seen the players. Now for politicians, what they want. If you want to provide evidence what their internal guys are doing or any external individual, the first question is for the public finance, what is the revenue implication? If you tell me that you want to change the law, to change the rate, the first question is, what is the revenue implication? It could be either increase in revenue or decline in revenue, but I need to know the magnitude. That is very important for me. Who will be affected by this policy? And which population? Politicians are interested in that. And as a researcher or the internal researcher or external researchers, please ensure that you are able to give the correct information to the politician. What they hate is they don't want to be ambushed. Don't tell them something, you just come with a beautiful idea, oh, revenue is going to go up by 5 or 10 percentage, or 1 or 2 percentage point of GDP, but the other side of the policy, they don't know about it. If there's any backlash, they will disown you. And you have to pay for that. Because they will say, you should have told us that if we do this, this is going to be the thing. And they will call you. You asked us to do this. Look at this. This is the mess. Go and correct it now. They will leave it to you. So that's the thing. So make sure that you don't ambush them. Tell them what is the mitigating route. For example, if you go tell them, remove subsidies on fuel. I have told you the imports statistics shows we are not oil producing country. You remove subsidy, you need to tell this man, yes, fuel or petroleum products are highly inelastic. The substitution effect is low, they will not move. What that means, if I tax it, what is going to happen? We'll get a lot of revenue. Yes, that's a good story. But then tell him that when that happens, prices might go up, the transportation might go up, and who are going to be affected? Oh, the students who are using public transport, now we see. Then the president will say, but I said free quality education, and we want every child to be in school. So now you are telling me if I pay school fees and now the child is not going to school, why? Because of increase in public transportation. So you have undermined my broad objective. So tell him, yes, I know this will happen, but what we can do, revenue implication, and politicians, we want numbers. Numbers in the sense, tell me specifically, if I do this, revenue is going to be like 10 billion. But we can provide school buses, which will cost just 1 billion. And that will solve the problem. Then the politician will now relax and say, oh, I think that is doable. Yeah. But note that these are all information that are needed for policy, but the Revenue Authority and the Ministry of Finance or the internal researchers cannot provide all this information. They cannot. One, because of time. Because we said the masters require time and they require it now. They want the answer and they want it now. So things like impact analysis, thorough evaluation of policies after being implemented, we normally don't have time to do that. We don't normally have time to do that. So what that means, external researchers, big opportunity. You can grab that opportunity, fill in that gap, and that will help the internal researchers. Now, the type of research which they normally do is, I just cited, let's say, tax administration in this case, as a case study, for you to see the type of research my guys have been doing. Again, broadly speaking, for any effective tax administration, you require the understanding of the principle of the taxes. You need to know the legislation supporting the tax. You need to know the data on taxable activities. You need to know you are implementing, how to implement it. So we expect the research, the internal researchers actually to support us. So that is why most of the research they do hinges on either tax gap analysis, tax compliance and enforcement strategies, technology integration, because now revenue authorities over the past 10 years, we've gone into massive automation. Even in my case, within 5 years, I was able to deploy 5 revenue systems. It was tough, but we had to do it because we wanted to generate enough information to help in our our tax administration. But the impact analysis is quite minimal. Now, this is just a sample of the researches that we have done within a period 2018 to 2023 by the research department. Yes, let's move. Now, what you will see from those studies are, one, yes, they also collect, analyze, and interpret information. So meaning, yes, they are doing it to provide solutions to specific problems which we have identified. But also note that most of their work are what? Organizationally focused. They are focusing on the organization, what the organization is doing. So predominantly looking from within, and most of the research they do are demand-driven. For example, if I know that we have issues at the port, they have got complaints that containers are delaying at the port, I will call my research department. What is the problem? So you see, the problem is a practical problem. The practical problem is what? Containers are delaying. The turnaround time is low. So I need you to tell me why the delay, who are the actors in the clearing processes, and how do we improve the turnaround time? So then you can ask, oh, let me do my time release studies, and you trigger that one, you provide that answer for me. Not that they don't generate their own questions, But if you want to do any other research other than those demand-driven research, then it has to be approved by management and it has to be part of your work plan and it should fit in the overall strategic plan of the organization. So meaning you don't really have that liberty to just sit down doing academic research for publication. It has to fit within the strategic plan of the organization. So what that takes us to is that most time, like I was saying, they don't normally look outside the organizational structure. So things like impact studies, evaluation becomes really, really a challenge for the local researchers. This is just some example that tax administration is not only affected by the internal dynamics, there are also other external players. For example, the judiciary, the action of the judiciary will affect revenue policy and revenue administration. Similarly, the weaknesses in the revenue administration will affect the judiciary, the macroeconomic environment, the political ideology, the public sector institute, the culture, etc. So what this tells me that yes, I'm talking about taxation, but political scientists can do research alongside with the tax officers. Sociologists can do research with the tax officers, etc. Macroeconomists can do research because there is a clear linkage between those environments. Because there's the nucleus in here. It affects the environment, and the environment will also affect tax policy and administration. So that's what we see. So the opportunity is huge. So it's not only like, I'm not interested in tax. Yes, you might not be interested in tax as a politician, but there is a political issues. The political ideology, even of your party, may have effect on tax policy and tax administration. What is needed is now to know the transmission mechanism, what the theory is saying, etc. So again, just to emphasize that the opportunities are there, these are the opportunities, because for you to be able to get those relationships, it means it requires asking the right questions, conceptual questions. You should be able to test the hypothesis. You should be able to understand the transmission mechanism. It requires strong methodology. It requires adequate time and resources. That is the quality of an academic researcher. You have, so meaning you have a role to play in there. So challenges, of course, you will see. Some of the challenges you will see, of course, like I said, is closed for tax policy. External researchers not too clear on what will be the key questions or the objective of the ministers, and also issues dealing with data adequacy and correctness, issues dealing with connectivity, issues dealing with weaknesses in the legislation regarding access to information, lack of evidence in the context, and lack of interest sometimes from the side of the policymaker. There are all that, so make sure you grab the opportunities when they come. Some opportunities, how do you grab the opportunity? Where do you get the opportunities? Make sure you have strong informal contacts within the country and invite internal researchers. Just take them to casual areas, discuss topics, discuss relationship, network when opportunity arises for you to attend international conferences. Don't go to the conference and just keep focusing on the presentations you are going to do. Network. In fact, I got to know ICTD through international conference. I met Mick in Paris. I did presentation at the OECD, and after the meeting, Mick Moore, as a very senior researcher, he knows how to market his product. He went to me, called me, and he engaged me because I came from the public sector. So that is how we met. From that time, he invited me to come to ICTD for the inauguration of the ICTD. So when you get this opportunity to go present papers at international conferences, don't just get bogged down with the presentation. It is interesting, you are worried to get the best paper, but make sure have some time to do networking. Also, disseminate your research findings, organize workshop. Well, this is for formal setting. If, for example, ICTD, you can organize workshop, invite and politicians, technocrats, etc. to these ones. And once you get there, the aim is to get your report, but also to create networking. Use your home country offices to introduce you to the institutions in the country. For example, if you are a British a researcher, you get to Sierra Leone, you have FCDO supporting a lot of programs there. You have GIZ, Oxfam for the EU, GIZ from Germany, etc. These are not too much of bureaucrats. You can easily get to them, and they can introduce you to us, you know, as well. The other one is actually, at times, policymakers or stakeholders can seek evidence. We can normally say, okay, we want to conduct, for example, we want to do taxpayer perception survey. Well, the NRA or the Revenue Authority shouldn't do it for fairness or neutrality. We have to outsource that. If you see that opportunity, also grab it. You can apply for it. The tender process might be long, or even these other organizations like the EU, the Christian Aid, like how I met with Will, we met on Christian Aid research. He was contracted, he went for a research project for Christian Aid. Yeah, so that's how we met. I was a local person, then that's how we got our informal relationship. The other one that is very important is one-on-one engagement, house of institution. You can ask, I want to see the Commissioner General. I want to see the minister. I want to see, because I said some of the discussions, policy prescription can come from the minister himself. So, but I know the difficult question is, how do you access these guys? It's true, we're extremely busy people. The minister is extremely busy. And how is he going to listen to you? You can send letters, they will look at the letters, fine. But normally it's slow, they are very slow in acting when it comes to that. So again, make sure that get your informal but influential individuals. Any minister or head of parastatal must have somebody within that he believes. He respects his view, I just rely on, for example, if you go to the revenue administration in Sierra Leone, you talk to the head of the research department, Dr. Carbo. Obviously, it's easier to get him, but once you get him, it's going to be easy for you to get onto me. Because whatever he tells me, I trust him. You know, so you have to do your homework to know who are these trusted guys, you know, or the executive assistant. Or if you are finding it difficult, again, you can use your home country institutions. So normally they send these letters. If I get a letter from FCDO to say, there is a gentleman here who wants to talk to you, can you please listen to him? I will definitely take it serious. That's, I tell you for free. The politician will take it serious, you know? And above all, do go in for collaborative research. Now, so collaborative research, like I said, is also very important. Once you get this opportunity, try to collaborate, because imagine we are talking about two strong guys. One has the context and access to institutional information, and the academic guy is there. He's so strong when it comes to theory, when it comes to methodological skills. So when the two guys meet, I'm sure it's going to be a win-win situation for both parties, for ease of getting data for you, the external, for ease of research dissemination, and for knowledge transfer for the internal researcher. So is that the only downside to it is that you have to be very cautious, because sometimes when you are doing your ally or collaborative, there's a risk of political interference or institutional interest. Because if I'm doing research with you, ICTD, there are certain things I will not want you to write about my organization. The reason being, we don't want to see those things in the papers, because these newspaper guys, they take things out of context. I remember practically when there was a seminar organized by ICTD in Freetown, I think last year, December, and my guys went and they did some presentation on customs. And customs is quite a very sensitive issue. So I had to call the research director. I said, look, my friend, what type of presentation is that? Because it shouldn't be seen as you are there to audit my operation. You are not an external auditor. If the research is seen as an external auditor, the next time we will not allow you to do this kind of research. They say no. So it's tricky that they may want to affect, to interfere with your methodology, interfere with your neutrality. So keep focused that you have your own responsibility and you have your own agenda which you want to achieve. Yes, like I said, these are the collaborative researches we've done. The ITAX, Integrated Tax Administration Strategy Adoption Study was done jointly with ICTD, Revenue Potential Informal Sector, Budget Advocacy, Taxation on High Net Individual. Recent study in 2021 was also done. Tax perception was outsourced. Tax gap analysis was also jointly done as a collaborative with Adam Smith International in 2016. Let's move. Now, this is important again. Like I said, disseminating the one-on-one. If you are opportune to meet the minister, if you are opportune to meet the commissioner general, note one thing that, like I said, these are extremely busy guys. So when you are going in there, you have now the opportunity, the FCDO wrote a letter, the guy said, okay, I can listen to him. Go with the intention, my meeting with this guy is just 15 minutes. It can extend, but depending on how you are going to put across the stuff. So make sure that you are punchy and to the point. And the other thing is that do your homework well to know what will be his interest area. If you are talking, for example, to the CG of a revenue authority, whatever you are talking about in terms of policy implementation, the first question is what is going to be the revenue implication? And what are the administrative burden or challenges? How am I going to do it? So you need to know that. If you are talking to the politician, the president, for example, or to the minister, you need to know that the Minister of Finance, yes, he is very much interested in revenue, but he's also interested in the welfare. So you need to know that. So go with those specific information, be punchy and engage him. You will be surprised that you can even have a longer meeting. Because after that, what he will now do, oh, this is quite interesting. Can we have a meeting where you can present this to my technical staff so that they can ask questions? So that's what we normally do. Because once he is interested in, and the most important thing is that the context specific. Make sure that the recommendations you are making are actually in the context and they are very clear evidence that fit into the policy question and the broader agenda. So if you go start talking about this is what is happening in Uganda, Uganda did this one, this is fine, it's a nice story, we'll listen to it, but the minister will tell you, but this is not Uganda, this is not this is Sierra Leone. We have our cultural differences, we have our context differences. I mean, I really needed to get information that is context specific. So you have to be mindful of that. I'm not saying don't come with other country evidences. They are very impactful, but normally we don't normally take that, because the price of rice is high in the neighboring country, so we need to increase the price. People go beyond that. Let us see how do we manage that situation in there. So now, for us as practitioners, when normally we come to these institutions for master's, PhD, or even to write academic papers for publication, we normally get a lot of challenges. And I can't exempt myself because I was from the research department of the Revenue Authority before I left for PhD. And some of the problems you will face, one, asking the right question. Reorientation of the mind to move away from already what we call practical or identified problems. For 10 years, what your commissioner general will tell you, this is the problem. This is what we have seen. We need answers to this. So the problems are very practical. The questions are very practical. Now you come to another institution and what they are telling you You have to ask more conceptual questions with strong theoretical underpinnings. That is a problem. That's one challenge. So how do you reorientate your mind to move away from that? The second one is you are changing the audience. We are used to what? Immediately solving this problem. Institutional focused research. Now you are required to do more rigorous explanatory research. I'm not saying the exploratory or descriptive research or static analysis we do are not important. They are. We have our internal models. Most of them are simulation but static models. They are not very dynamic. But now, when you are in the academic forum, obviously they are going to look at more rigorous research that has to be done, not just describing. To say, I did a survey, 10% say yes, 20% say no. So what about that? You know, for us, that could be equal enough. But for the academics, they want to know, so what? We know this 10% is saying yes, 20 is saying, what is the relevance of that? And finally, which was another thing, was the reception to criticism. You know, as a research director for 10 years or so, normally our work do not go through a lot of rigors, peer review. Now you come to an environment where the peer review is so serious. In fact, if you are unfortunate, not like the kind of professors I've seen here, they are so friendly. You meet somebody who is so brutal. After presentation, you will just say, no, this course is not for me. I think I have to go. It can serve as a disincentive for you. But note that don't be shocked that these things will happen once you get in there. So advice is that once you get in here, start thinking like an academic researcher. What do? Do more of review of literature. Do more of review of literature, spend more time on that, so that at least now the cap is, how can I add some values? Whether it is, even if it's so marginal, but just do some, look at the gap, what is in there. You have to search. Nobody is searching for you to show you this is the problem. You have to search for the problem. Discuss more with senior colleagues, reach out to peer, start thinking like an academic, like I said, be receptive to criticisms, because again, you'll be shocked. Sometimes you think you have done your best presentation. The number of questions that you will get, the questions come because this presentation is interesting. Your topic is interesting. I remember when I did my first paper for my PhD, the questions were so many. I went to my professor, I said, Prof, I think this thing we need to change it, because the questions were so many. Yes, I said, no, it's because it's interesting. That is why people are asking these many questions. You can do it and get it better. And we were able to publish it. And once you do the first publication, then the confidence levels start to grow. Stay focused and be calm and confident that you will do it. So in conclusion, I will say research opportunities in public policy are many. We still have a lot of unanswered questions to solving practical problems, as well as many hypotheses to test. But if you want to be relevant in the policy framework, make sure your work situates in the context and present it in a way that we have more impact on policy development. Collaborative research is a win-win situation. Go into more collaboration, but each party should not lose sight of its mandate. Note, practitioners, we are mandated to provide solutions to practical problems affecting the organization, whilst you academic, you are seeking to add to a larger body of literature or knowledge for future policy development. And I can say data becomes and remain a problem, the correctness of the data, but that should not forestall any research in the low-income countries, and that reinforces the need for research collaboration. So on that note, I want to thank you very much for listening, and thank you and wish you Merry Christmas in advance.
Thank you, Samuel. Just going to open the floor for questions or comments or queries. Yes. What was your PhD paper question?
Oh, okay. The first paper, okay, I was talking about, okay. Yes, can I answer right away? Okay, yeah, so I was looking at the fiscal sustainability of interestingly, it was on South Africa economy, and there was this issue about the business cycle, which normally, you know, if you are looking at this business cycle, which says during boom, the way policymakers respond to changes. For example, if there is a disequilibrium, now there's a budget deficit. Now, so are we saying in the literature, most papers are using this error correction model, which says that the speed of adjustment is the same, which means even if it is a surplus, budget surplus, or a budget deficit, the way the equilibrium comes, the economy comes back to equilibrium using the same speed of adjustment. So what that paper actually was able to say is that no, the speed of adjustment definitely is not going to be the same. So I used the smooth transition error correction model to show that during boom or during surplus or even deficit, government do not easily, there is an allowable deficit beyond which or before government starts or policymakers starts to react to that. So that was what the paper was about, yeah? So that is what I did, the smooth transition error correction model, not the normal error correction that assume linearity in your data.
Martin.
But that was just one paper. We had to do 3 papers in the dissertation. It's not a straight dissertation. You do papers which you collate into dissertation. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. That was really interesting. The last little bit I found about how you have to learn to stop thinking one way and start thinking a different way. It was very familiar to me from my own learning from the NGO world.
Yeah.
So my question is, how cynical should I be about the importance of the underlying quality of research when a policymaker is evaluating? So you talked a lot about what I can do as a researcher to get the CG or the politicians to pay attention to my research. How much from their perspective are they going to pay attention to whether or not the actual underlying research is good? But to what extent is it more important just to tell the right story?
Okay, so whether the policymakers, again, like I said, that is the reason why when you do the first engagement with the head of institution, what we are doing is not going to look at whether you use this kind of methodology or that. Yeah, he is interested in those answers. Well, once he is interested in those answers, the next stage is, can you talk to my technical team? Can you talk to my technical team? Note, in revenue administration and the public sector, the research team is also considered as the think tank. So they are guys who are PhD holders, they have master's holders, they have also the best minds are normally kept in the research department. So there now we go into the bigger picture. There now everybody is going to look at their methodology, they look at the quality of their research. And if the quality of the research is poor, obviously the research director will come, the way that man did, I don't know where he got his data from. I don't think it's what that's going to undermine that. So I'm saying that's just the first layer to get the interest. If you get the head of department to be interested, you know, because the bottom down, you can start from the guys, you lobby them before they come to me. That could be one. But if you get to the head of department, he's interested, obviously the head of the department cannot just puts a tick to it, he will say, can you present it to the technical guys? It's not like going with a business solution to me. I'm not an IT person. But when you come here, explain all the beautiful things this system will do, I will say, oh, this is so interesting. I think I intend to fall for this. But can we meet? Can you meet with my IT guys? So there now, when you are now meeting with them, there you can spend 1 hour or 2 hours, depending on, because they have the time. Okay, so that's what I can say. So make it quality. Yeah, make it quality. Let your assumptions, don't do this kind of assumptions. Again, that's very important. Then I say situate your recommendation. Don't go to the policymaker and start too much explanation of your methodology. I started with an assumption of where there is no government. The sooner you start talking, and then they will say, no, why there is a government? Or there is a closed economy, where we only have 2 people there. This is how we start building the model. He's not interested. He said, no, this guy is smart. We don't have 2 people. We have 8 million people here. So be careful the kind of people you talk to when you want to explain your methodology. For the technical guys, you can start building your models. It started from this a closed economy to what is that? You do that. That's fine until you arrive at what we are doing. Other than that, so the politicians, that is the end of that discussion. So the man came here telling me, let's assume there's no government. How can we assume there's a government?
Max, you had a question.
Hi, thank you, Samuel. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on the time side of it all. So you highlighted really clearly that academics and policymakers work on very different timelines, right? So there are enormous time pressures for people, especially working in research departments and revenue authorities when budgets are being made. And obviously academics often work substantially slower. And also often due to factors that we can't entirely control. So both kind of groups of researchers work on very different timelines, and it feels like there's very little we can do about that. And yet we try to work together. So I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about how to make that work in your experience, if we can't fully remove the kind of different timelines and different constraints on both ends.
Okay, so I can say that, of course, you need to be clear on when do you want to influence the policy process. That is one. The second aspect is that I often tell people, academics, you don't need to wait until their paper has been published before ever it's been disseminated. All what I can tell you, you have even the exploratory and the descriptive part of your work can be so solid that alone can just blow the guy off without even waiting for that of your explanatory or the rigor. Yeah. So tell him these are preliminary, but this is what we have done, and this is what the data have started showing us in that. It can even inform the immediate and policy and the policy T+1, the future policy. So don't be discouraged that, oh, it's going to take that long for me, because you don't have control over the peer review. They send it to external reviewers. It's taking some time, and then you don't know the kind of comments. Don't wait. If you are doing collaborative work, even the descriptive part and the exploratory part, make them know what we have started seeing in the data, and more can be confirmed as we move along. Yeah, then they know that you are on it and you are making a lot of progress in there. But don't water down the quality of your own work just because also you want to meet the deadline. They need it. They need it. And I'm telling you from my experience that most of the exploratory, even the kind of methods you are using to do your exploratory, it's quite recent, and they can be blown off.
Deep had a question first, sorry. I'm just going through the order.
Thank you for the presentation. That was very insightful. My question is regarding what you said about focus, about how you should remain focused even if the person you're working with has their own political motivations. But often if you do not adhere to what the person wants you to do, you might lose out on the network and you might not be able to do anything with the insights that you have. And somewhere down the line, if you had listened to them, maybe tweaked your findings, fit it into their amoral agenda to an extent, you could still have generated some impact. So where do you draw that line? And just following on from that, my second question is, as a nascent researcher, say if you are a nascent think tank, if you don't come from an established or recognized institution, how do you access these networks, even if you have good findings? How do you get to the right person? Will they give you the same or enough value to listen to you and to maybe consider your proposals or insights?
Yeah, so if I get it right, you say like you are in partnership and this other partner is trying to drag you into his own belief. He has his own agenda. Well, again, it depends on what you are doing exactly. That's what I'm saying. Assuming you are a PhD student and you are doing your job, your research that is of interest to the policymakers, and not every part of the research, but some component of it is relevant for your PhD. Now, if you allow the revenue administration or the politician to drift you away from your PhD because they are going to pay you, that's another problem. But what I'm saying is, even you can still build a network by understanding what they want, whatever. That's why I presented what are the type of information these guys really want. So you can, it requires a lot of hard work. You need to do it quickly to actually satisfy him. The beauty about the collaboration for you, for example, as a student or external researcher is because of that collaboration, now you have access to administrative data. You have access to even external data from other agencies. Because if, for example, in Sierra Leone, we have 54 MDAs, there's no way you can network with 54 MDAs. But by having a strong link with revenue administration, they can now make you have access to information on the judiciary, on the other components. So that's what I'm saying, that yes, it should be a win-win. It should not be a win-loss. You are not in partnership to lose. So don't allow him to drift you away from your own focus. That's just what I can advise in there. How you network, again, I explained that one. Build a lot of informal contacts there with influential guys. And then it depends again on the kind of research. For example, when ICTD went to Sierra Leone, they had to partner with Budget Advocacy Network to organize a workshop. Now, Budget Advocacy Network, I'm sure they might have done their own assignment, ICTD, to note that Budget Advocacy Network is quite a credible network because it's a network of series of NGOs coming together, CSOs and NGOs, and over the years, they have got their track record in doing budget analysis. So when you network with those kind of people, it's quite simple. When we started also, even as think tank, before becoming the Commissioner General, when I started the research think tank, we were able to influence policy at some point. That was in 2014 when there was this Ebola issue and revenue became an issue. So they were like, but fortunately we had an insider information to know what is the objective playing in their minds. That now that we have this Ebola situation, how are we going to get revenue, the low-hanging stuff? So think tank, I went in there with my guys. We did a lot of just interesting small analysis in terms of this personal income tax analysis. What is the threshold at which taxes are introduced? The maximum tax rate is there. Just simple analysis. And I went to the minister. I said, I have something to discuss with you. And I started saying, oh, it looked like this personal income tax is not progressive. So look at this. The lower level is having the burden. Look at the income at which the maximum rate is kicks in. On average, this is the other countries is like you do this 30% at an income that is 10 times greater than the GDP. per capita. And the minister said, what? This is interesting. Can you present this one? And I went to Ministry of Finance and I presented that one. And that was how I recommended that the first thing you have to do, increase another band, add another band to make it 35% and increase the threshold 35%, but it should be consistent with that. But I was in opposition anyway by then. So once they introduced that one, then the revenue came. But when we came now, we reversed it to 30%. So that is it. That's a problem. And again, sometimes they will say, when I came as the Commissioner General, you know, some of the problems I had was this just honest revelation. Sometimes I want to see things differently because, again, recommendation is as good as the information as at that time. So that would be my argument. If I sit now as Commissioner General and I have full viewing now, complete viewing, the recommendation I made might be modified a little. And they'll say, oh no, when you are there as a researcher, you said we should do this one. Now, why do you want us to change? So, but again, it's a dynamic world. So that's the problem. But the more your collaboration is good, the better, because you have access to that. But again, sometimes if there is doubt in the collaboration, access to information, sensitive information, you will not. But when the trust is there, they can leave it open because they know you will not betray that, and you can sign for data protection. It's a credible institution. You cannot send it to somebody to just use that one as a manifesto, something.
Shandana?
Hi, Samuel. I'm Shandana. I think you've answered my question to quite an extent, but it was a follow-on to Max's question and your response to that, because very often the reason why we'll hold back for a really long time is because the idea that policy might be based on your research also adds a lot of pressure for you to be sure that what you're saying is something that's valid and that things will change because of it and that they'll change in the direction that you need them to change in or that you expect them to change in. But as you just said, information is that, you know, is as good as in this moment and it can change tomorrow. So I was just thinking, is what you're suggesting the fact that these are longer term collaborations, that they can be built as that, but also that maybe we worry too much about the extent to which our research informs policy or that there's enough other factors that will play a role so that we want to get into an engagement rather than sort of insisting on certain kinds of policy changes that are based on the results that we're getting. Especially because our results, like was discussed, can take a really long time.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, of course you handle that part. That's, like I said, the evidence is as good as what is available at that time, and you can base it on that. Make your assumptions clear within the parameters you are making your recommendations. And like I said, it's more useful if you situate it. Whether you have to insist on that. Well, it's like saying academics normally want to see their papers being published. That's the time they sleep and they are more excited. Whether all papers have to be published, that is another thing. So I know academics are more interested, and you feel good to say, oh, that policy I saw in that document is coming from my research. But don't be frustrated because at times, it's not of your fault. It's not because your work is not good. You can just get some of our colleagues that are not just even interested in it. The sooner they talk about academic research, they are not even, this person is from the university, these university guys. Right from there, that's that. So don't beat yourself too hard to say, oh, your work is not good. But make your own effort to push out, to make sure people know about your work and the extent to which your work is going to delay, and the preliminary results, share with them. Don't wait until you say everything is perfect. In any case, in our economies like ours, there are a whole lot of dynamics. A lot of things might change quickly. You know, we were talking about peace consolidation. Everything was fine. When was it? Last week, Sunday, there was a coup d'etat. So all the assumptions of our behavior, good governance, everything, the approach is going to definitely change how we're going to react to it. So again, within this framework, that is what we have done, and tell the policymaker is within this framework. And let the framework not be too abstract, let it be within what he knows. And don't underestimate them, they know their environment, they know their people.
I think I'm going to ask a couple of questions myself. One of them picking precisely on the point, as you said. I mean, you met Mick in Paris, God knows when, and then Will, and there's Vanessa and Giovanni. There's a lot of ICTD people that you engaged over time. And it was actually that question of building trust. How does that happen? I mean, how long, when was the first time you met one of us?
I said 2009 or 10.
2010. So yeah, so 13 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So how did that trust building happen, as in over time?
Well, I think the issue came based on sincerity, actually. When I met Will, of course, he was contracted by I think Christian Aid. Yeah, I think it was Christian Aid. They do this tax research. And I also happened to get my engagement letter from Christian Aid, and they said, you are the local consultant. So that's how we met. But I mean, the issue was he has his own part, what he has to write, and I had my own contextual stuff to write, and he was to do the final write-up. But one thing he did was not to only stop at that paper to submit, but we engaged. I remember he took me to the beach and said, let's go and have a drink. And we started discussions. And he started asking me critical questions. By then, I was with the revenue institution as the research director. You know, so he started engaging me. We started talking genuinely. And fortunately for me, of course, I had this invitation to OECD to do presentation on taxation and development. And I was lucky because we had already done similar work with Will. You know, so I presented this. And again, there I met Mick. And Mick just during lunch said, oh, I realized you reference Will. Do you know Will? I said, yes. I said, we did a work together, those kind of things. And that's how he invited me here. So since then, of course, we had a lot of engagements. When I left, finally, the revenue administration to go for my studies, I was there, I still working with them. And one thing which I can give credence to them was, again, helping to building the capacity of these researchers, because Will was more interested in political economy. I was that traditional tax person. So he was able to like make me get interest in political economy. And we did the proposal. I said, oh, we can help fund this one. Then I was excited. So the funding, and he said, why can't you? So he helped to build the capacity of in the political economy and also even the institution-wise. So, and I think it's a matter of trust. And how do you get trust? It's over the period. I mean, everybody should know what he's doing. I know there were limitations in terms of, I know he's an academic researcher. I know there are certain areas I cannot, there is what we call confidentiality in giving out that. And not up to that time, it was an informal relationship. For almost that 13 years, we actually had more formal relationship in the form of MOU when I became Commissioner General in 2009, when we met in Uganda. So that's how my institution actually got a formal relationship with the ICTD in the form of a signing of MOU. But again, it was built on strong relationship. We had met, I know the players, I know the quality of research. They send their players also. They also need to, in fact, they were sending some people. They were so difficult, because sometimes when you go to the field, most of our guys, sorry to say, we can have researchers, field officers that are very lazy. the one easygoing. And you see these guys go. There was one guy that went to me. He was so stubborn. It's the same thing with Vanessa. When he says, sometimes we go and say, Vanessa, that place is a very dangerous place. It's far. And he said, let's go there. Let's find a way. And, you know, those kind of things. So through that one, they started getting relationship also out there and getting information. And they started getting their work being published. So win-win. What is happening? The academic researchers, external researchers, now started getting their work published using data from Sierra Leone. Now Sierra Leone became a research feed, you know, on taxation. Openness. Yeah.
Adi, sorry.
Not your research at CPI. And Philip, or the director of research here, is coming to your door with results that he knows aren't going to please you. So he's done some research. They found something that either goes against the policy that the CG has taken or the organization has taken, or there's some result that says something isn't working. As the CG, how do you react to that, and what do you need in terms of evidence to kind of convince you of that case? So I'm thinking about it from the perspective of like a researcher bringing bad results, right? And you want to convince the CG that you're doing the wrong thing. Here's the reason why, and I have a solution for you, but you're not going to like it.
Okay. So now, if it's coming from an external player presenting this to me, the first thing is that I will just turn around to my research team. How comes you didn't know this one? You have been with us all this while. So that's, again, even you as the research director is going to be an indictment on you. Why? Why is it that we don't know about this? And again, it depends on the manner and the forum where you are going to tell me. If it is a one-on-one research, by the way, it's not even strange. These are things when I was CG, we get these things always. I get it from the technical assistants. That is why we call it exit meetings. When they come for exit, it's a one-on-one in between the researcher and myself. So you tell me all the things that are not working. In fact, sometimes these are the things I want to hear. Not always the things that are working. But when we get to the public and you start saying those things, then I will put a defense. Whether it's working or not, I will put a defense. So that's the thing. Then it means it's actually not issue of collaboration now, it is issue. If you note, when the IMF guys are writing their report, the back office report is quite different from what, because even some of the policy framework, you do exit with the minister. You read it, say, no, without that kind of caption, we will not want it, we will not allow it. We will not allow it. The macroeconomic fundamentals are extremely weak, we will not allow that. You have to modify that because it's going to the public. But within myself, you've done an exit. You have told me it will help me for future amendments or future actions within the organization.
So there's the case of an external researcher bringing you bad findings, or some like IMF.
No, internally is fine. Internally is fine. That's what I expect you to do. But you will not be having issues with me as the CG. You'll be having issues with your colleagues. Because anything you say, if you talk about the custom is weak, is that, the commissioner of custom is going to be there. I'm there as the CG. I turn to the commissioner. Commissioner of custom, you heard from the director of research. What can you say? You have to defend yourself. Normally, these are the things we do in management when we get to management meetings. Or if you say the domestic taxes, there are lots of leakages, these are not this. The commissioner of custom, DTD will say, look, maybe it's because of how you are looking at it. You will sort it out until we get the final thing. But I will be more interested in that. And these were the kind of things that were coming to me anyway. Like the kind of studies Philip was saying, I mean, these were the kind of things that were coming up, you know. the staff productivity. They will tell you, oh, there are many in that department, the staff are not even productive. You know, this is data. You need to do staff realignment. Yeah, the CG will want that. These are the kind of information. But you cannot go to a public forum, you go to a seminar and you start saying that. No, it's you are attacking the institution and have a responsibility to defend it. And will really defend it and make your research useless.
So oh yeah, sure, go ahead. There's an online question, which is.
So I wanted to ask, in your experience, what are some of the incentives that can be thought of, both for researchers, academics, and policymakers, to increase collaboration and communication to close the gap between them in policymaking? And that's in countries where this win-win scenario perspective is not a given.
The incentives? What incentives will you give?
So
I'm not-
what incentives can be thought of for researchers and academics?
When there's no win-win scenario possible, as in someone will lose. I think that's the question of.
Someone will lose.
Yes.
I know is losing the policymaker. If the policymaker is going to lose, is not going to gain anything from the collaboration, they will not collaborate with you. It's going to be a difficult relationship, because I can't go into a relationship where I'm not gaining anything, except if it becomes a conditionality. Then that means it's not a collaboration. If, for example, it becomes a structural benchmark that I have to do it, if you don't do it, this is going to be, we are going to withhold, the MCC funds will not come. Well, that is a different thing. But if we are talking about collaboration, I expect that the collaboration should yield knowledge transfer, for example, and what I was even telling my guys when you are doing most of the collaborative work with this academic, I want you, when you are leave something there. It's not only the written document. You know, if we are talking about model, can they leave the model there? Is it possible, even at do file, you leave it with my guys so that they can also continue doing it? Because the collaboration might have a limit. You can't be everlasting. Or if we have these guys that are very good in simulation model, can they build one for you? Can you work so that they build a simulation model? And this is what these guys have been doing, the relationship with my organization and the ODA. The ODI guys that normally go to me. You know, that's why every now and then we request for them, because they must leave something there. Now they have internal models for internal revenue forecasting. You know, so we have to showcase what is the essence, the relevance of this collaboration. You know, at least it should come from, if not from me, but let the research team come to me to say, oh, the collaboration has improved on the way we are doing analysis, and we have to look at the data analysis we are doing internally. So that is what I can say. But you as an academic, I'm sure you will always win, because one thing that I have said is actually getting the administrative data, getting the context right. You will get that one when you do your collaboration. So that is why I strongly believe that where the collaboration is, the two good heads are better than one. You know, but of course, if the two people are not good, well, even if they collaborate, there's nothing they can gain.
My second question is actually a nice follow-on from Adi's point, which was a few months ago, ICTD had a bunch of heads of research of different revenue authorities here. I think it was in March or April, I think. And there were people here from Eswatini, Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and we had a panel on the use of evidence. And there was this very interesting point where, I think it was Edward from Eswatini who was saying that they got into a position that a lot of policymakers and politicians realized that revenue authorities have interesting, useful data. And therefore, you know, they start paying attention to revenue authorities within the government, within different states. But then there were these two issues, one of them on how much politicians believed in that evidence. And one of the struggles they had, and this was a question that some of them couldn't answer, and it was an interesting question, which was whether, what do you do if you're in a research unit within the government, what do you do when the government doesn't want to listen to what you're saying because it's bad news, for instance? So how do you deal with that?
Again, yes, so it's quite a tricky and difficult question because you want whatever you say to be taken on board. But one thing, again, even as a researcher, and this is one thing that they don't know, they look at the data is fine. Sometimes you are an internal researcher, but the context, certain context, you don't understand. You don't understand the political context. The reason being, you have not been in some meetings, high-level meetings, for you to understand what, for example, the president is demanding of the revenue authority, for example. So the context is very important. What you are saying is correct. But in the context of this political demand now, I cannot do it, my friend. I cannot do this. So sometimes I tell them, you don't know, if you know what I know, and I cannot tell you, I will only tell you, my friend, this is a good work. Let us see how we can put it across. If it's something that is really going to be extremely bad news for government, whether researchers are the right people to communicate is another thing altogether. Whether we have that communication skills to make sure that you get the attention for him to believe. But also, a lot of bad news, which we find it difficult to communicate if the trust level also is not there. I can also tell you. That is why whatever you are doing, make sure that your boss, your CG, or your minister actually believes in what you say. And you have done it once, you recommended, you have told them all what will happen, and it happens. And when you go to meetings, I can still recall somebody when I was there, even we have this economic management meeting chaired by the president. I can tell you, anytime I put my hand up, the president will always say, okay, we have had it, can we listen to the DG also? He will take it serious, depending on that. The beauty is that because we have a lot of data, and I have told you also, politicians want to listen to numbers, not too more propositions. They want numbers, cite the numbers. And when you show the numbers, let me tell you one example. There was issue dealing with tax exemptions. They are giving a lot of exemptions, tax exemptions. But because normally people just go to tell the president, oh, we are giving a lot of exemptions and this is not good, it's affecting the revenue. They will not take it serious. But when you go with numbers to tell him January to June, this is the number of exemptions, the amount of exemptions we gave, and of which this is what went to this unit. This is what went to this. And Your Excellency, your office also, based on your approval, this is what. Looking at the number, I say, what you mean? That one happened? Trust me, if they see it alarming, they will take caution. Except somebody that is extremely a dictator now. Oh, I don't want to, you will say you don't want to listen. In that case, you are outside this framework because we are talking about a democratic state, a state where you have to go with your manifesto, where you are going to sell out your manifesto to people. The election can be competitive, you can be kicked out of power. So you will listen to data, you will listen to that. It's just a manner, again, is the approach that you do it. Again, and the trust level. Yeah. Be specific, tell them this is the number. Sometimes the things are disjointed, so they will not see it. But when you collate the numbers, you show them, look at the approvals, Your Excellency. You're not doing it to embarrass the presidency or the minister. You are doing it to say, oh, maybe, these things come. Sometimes people just come with these things. They don't even tell us we do this approval. And then it will be charged. Please, I have had those kind of things. That is why when we were doing our exemption through the processing part, I was the last person to finally release. And the minister will say, oh, minister has approved. He said, please, if I approve anything which you think is not very good, can you call me, let me know? Sometimes these things, they sleep. You know, that you want to do it deliberately. You know, so, but again, he has to know what is your objective. It has to be clear that you're not doing it to embarrass the man, you know, or to ambush him.
Thank you. Thank you, Samuel, for this really good talk. I mean, it was useful for different people. It touched different bits of the audience, which was useful. It was useful for the researchers who keep on trying to do research, as you call them, like all us, the external researchers. It's also helpful to see using the different hats as a think tank, as a researcher, as an academic, as a government officer. But it was also very useful. I like those final slides also of what happens when you're a practitioner and you come into the academic world, because a lot of our students, that's them having to write deeper questions or come up with deeper questions, write deeper assignments. So it's very useful research skills and very useful advice for them as well. And thank you to the audience for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Shane.